are.
The hardest part about being a widow was the silence in her house. There used to be a song around every corner, a tune in the kitchen, a hand to hold, and a dance to share. But now there was space, and there was silence. One day there was a visitor at her front door, which caught her by surprise. She had no idea who it could be. She didn't know a soul around. She hesitated until she heard a familiar voice call out, "It's me, remember me?" She knew that voice. She would recognize it anywhere. She swung the door open with excitement and bewilderment. For the first time in 30 years, her childhood best friend stood before her in the flesh, mostly. Her face was exactly as she had remembered, freckled and newly wrinkled, but steeped in 3 decades of lost time. She looked her up and down as if to confirm she was real and noticed something peculiar. From the elbow down, her friend's arm was made of solid gold. "I've missed you," her friend said. "I've heard you've been alone, and I've wondered if anyone's taking care of you. I came to find you. Oh, and yes, I have a golden arm. I've had it for many years now. We can talk about that later. May I come in?" They talked and talked as if no time had passed, reliving memories and sharing stories from the lost years to fill in the gaps. "Do you remember when we were 8 and our families took us on that trip to the beach? We buried each other in the sand, hugged each other as the waves crashed over us, and dreamt of a future together, growing old, living out the golden years. Well, I have a crazy idea, and I want to know what you think. What if you sell your house? You always talk about how empty it is. And we move to Florida together. It'll be just like we dreamed of as children." And so they did. For 30 more years, they lived by the ocean and cared for each other in old age. They sat outside every day to watch the sun sink past the horizon, and they breathed the ocean air in and out. There was no pressure to fill the quiet. They were side by side. "Will you promise me 2 things?" her friend asked, seemingly out of nowhere. "When I die, bury me with my golden arm. And this second wish is very important. Promise you'll be okay without me." She promised her, but quickly put the thought of her friend dying out of her mind. She'd rather be the first to go. But one day, her dear friend passed. She tried everything to keep her head above water as waves of grief washed over. Her friend meant everything to her. And so she did just as promised. She made sure her friend was buried with her golden arm. The house was empty again and very quiet. She listened. She laid awake at night listening to the steady crash of each wave. She couldn't stop thinking. She couldn't stop thinking about her friend and that golden arm. She thought, if only I held on to that golden arm. If only she were still here. If only I could see the golden surface glittering in the summer sun. If only I could hold her hand one last time. She wanted to keep her promises, but truth be told, she was not okay. Her savings had run out and she was at risk of losing their house. She sold everything valuable that she owned, and it was still not enough. She remembered the golden arm. The wind howled and the palm trees shook, bending and arching as if they were about to snap. She laid awake as the ink-black waves crashed violently on the shore. She ventured out into the windy night and made the way to the burial site of her friend, the base of her favorite banyan tree. She dug down into the grave and took the golden arm. She walked home, heart racing, and the wind picked up around her. She thought she heard something. Took my golden arm. She wasn't quite sure what she was hearing and listened closer. Took my golden arm. She rushed inside, crawled into bed, and pulled the covers up with the arm next to her on the pillow. The ghostly voice wailed through the night, "Who took my golden arm?" The yearning bellows filled the empty house and bounced off the walls. The voice she would recognize anywhere had returned, and the sound of her best friend's haunting over the faint ocean noise brought her an odd comfort and lulled her to sleep. Finally laid to rest.